welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I am going to be revisiting my experiences with the help of Jen, the Arcane Observer. As always, you can find all episodes and ways to listen and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. Support is never expected but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. And there are many ways to support the show. You can, first of all, share your experiences on the website through a form. If you find the link at the top of the page that says Share Experience, you can click on that and either type out your experiences and or ask to join me on the show to talk about them. You can also share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platforms. You can sign up for the Patreon feed and get all the extra content there for as little as $1 a month. And you can also check out the merchandise store and get designs, shirts, and other items with designs made by friends of the show. Please follow friends of the show, including Jen, the Arcane Observer, who I just mentioned, who has her own channel and is the co-host of this show on Saturdays whenever she's able to make it, as well as Ricky of the Possible Podcast, who will show on Sundays and sometimes other days, and I join him for those shows as well. And Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio, which I call into frequently, and the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows online 24/7 for free. So this has been a lot of fun, this series here so far. We've only done one episode, and I'm pretty sure we have at least another couple after this one to go. And it's I enjoyed the last one, and we do have like I said, quite a bit more to cover. I've decided to do this by location, and so last time we covered the house that used to belong to my aunt and uncle, and this time we'll be covering the house that used to belong to my grandparents, and then later my older sister's family. And I'm not sure what one we'll cover next, but we'll deal with that when we get there. But before any of that, Jen, on the show, thank you for being here again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to tonight's show, and then I think we could probably talk about this for a little while still after, because there's a lot, and I don't want to really rush through any of it, and it's just kind of interesting, very interesting to listen to, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, but we did have one thing to cover first that you mentioned to me right messages the other day. If you want to talk about that for a bit before we get into my stuff.
Mention it. I do think it's a very it's a huge, very important event for, I think, for the entirety of humanity in a sense. There was an astronomical event that recently happened on the 20th, yesterday. And in my time, Central Standard Time, it happened at about 6 o'clock. But there was the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. And now this does happen. It's every 36 years or so. So the last time it happened, I think, was in 1989. And, this happens cyclically in that manner, that they will have this conjunction. It typically happens a couple times in a lifetime. So twice, like once or twice in a lifetime you would experience this. Maybe a third time, I suppose, depending on how long lived. But each time that it has happened, there have been these very like shackled norms and old worlds in a way. Like, for example, the Berlin Wall coming down, the end of the USSR, things like that. So that's most recent things that have happened. And then, in addition to that, though, however, this is quite a bit different in that previously it had been in Pisces, but at this point, with this particular Saturn-Neptune conjunction, it is in Aries 0 degrees, which is really incredible. It's at the very beginning of the zodiac, essentially. And in this essence, some astrologers have said that this has never happened before. Some say that it happened over, like in 4000 something odd BC. So it was about 1,000 years ago. Some aren't even in recorded history in any way. So basically, a once in a civilization event, and could be marking the last time it happened 9,000 years ago, for example. That would have been a Neolithic era. That's really incredible. The spacing of whether it's 6,000 years ago, it has not happened in thousands of years, and it just happened yesterday. Now, both of those planets are slow-moving planets, and so this will not just be over and done. It's still happening right now. These are very slow-moving planets, so we're experiencing this for the next 36 years, as it is right now, but it just has just begun. It's it's completed it. It's actually become conjunct. So here we are, and they call it a great reset. In astrology, they call it a Genesis moment, but I just think that everybody should be aware of it. And what's amazing, as though I have heard a couple of whispers about it here and there, I have heard almost no one talking about it. I mean, which is really odd, since it is such a huge event, a monumental moment to be witness to this event. And so I think it is incredible. I think people really need to take it, at least notice it, because it is. I've always believed too that the star and the constellation that they are seeing us, we can come and see of how they operate. And I think to notice moments like this is crucial for understanding what it means to be a human on this planet. And it's just kind of an incredible moment. A very special, unique moment that will never happen again. It's a once-in-a-civilization event.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And to me, the other thing that I think of is just everything having its own energy field and fields interacting, and what that could do to people and to the environment, to other energy fields, to anything anomalous or paranormal. Um,
Mhm.
just makes me wonder about those possibilities. Because I've always wondered, when if we look at the whole model of things, where these planets, solar system, are moving around this star, and this star is moving around the center of a galaxy, and the galaxy is moving through space, possibly. That means we're always sort of moving through potentially different energy fields, different um, environments that could have effects on things. And so I I think that this is happening, and especially again, if it's never happened before, then for our species, in a way, then that's fascinating, because then it's literally could be something that would have effects that we would have no idea what to expect, possibly, based on positions and
Exactly.
all that. And I think there's something to it.
I do. Um, this is following after, it's 3 days after the eclipse in the southern hemisphere. That's pretty incredible. The eclipse was serious. So this is, and it was all eclipse on a new moon. So we things that were all ones. People have been commenting on the moon earlier than it's no earlier than it should. I mean, that's just marking the season. That's just the flow of it. It's our calendar that is off. It's not the cycles of the stars and the moon are not off. It'd be our calendar that would be off. Our expectations might be off. But the other thing is too that's very interesting about Saturn is that it's all about order, but then you have Neptune, which is all about dreams and imagination. So when they're coming conjunct like that, when they're coming directly across, lined up like that, it is. I think it's very significant as far as either the solidifying of new dreams and ideas, the dissolving of old structures, there's a lot of symbology there. Um, a, the essence of the planets themselves, that they are coming into contact like that, which they have not done. I said again. I mean, at least in 36, well, certainly in 36 years, but to be doing it at zero Aries may have never done it before at that point, at the very beginning of the zodiac, like that, which is really incredible. And if they have done it before at the very beginning of the zodiac, it was in Neolithic age, possibly never, or maybe as early as 4000 BC. So it's been a very long time since this has happened. So
Yeah, and I
really
mean
neat.
that's a time when I mean that's when Egypt and all that, and that's there's so much debate about Egypt and all that part of the world and what was or wasn't, what did or didn't happen, and all that, and who built what or how they built it, and just all these other topics that are sort of connected to all that in a way, which I think is also fascinating. If that happened at that
It
time.
is. Yeah, it is really interesting because also too, I mean, people might think because, you know, we expect things to happen really quickly, but these are very slow moving planets. Um, the coming down of the Berlin Wall, the end of the Soviet Union, things like that, those were slow, gradual things that kind of came naturally. And this is sort of like the symbology of it is not that something immediately is going to happen. It's not like, oh, they're conjunct, immediately something happens. It's more like these are slow moving planets. It takes 36 years for it to complete its cycle. So it means kind of like each generation, like the generation that was coming up, for example, prior to um, this event, because this has been a completion of what began in 1989 and ended yesterday. So technically, a generation of experience from 1989 till yesterday, the influences of that generation. And then you have the beginning of another era, a Genesis moment, essentially, beginning right now. It's being witnessed by, it will be witnessed. You see, so it's just really incredible. But once again, you're not thinking. I mean, something abrupt could happen, but it's not quite like that. These are very slow moving energies, and so you'd expect to see it over the next 36 years. Now, you'd expect to see any change whatsoever, but something as dramatic, for example, I would consider if something as dramatic as the Berlin Wall coming down, as the USSR. But then on top, so I would nice that we see, you know, something as dramatic as that happening, or it's symbolizing the beginning of that happening or the culmination of it happening, because that's what happened at that point, 1989, for example, or the beginnings of that. But the point of the 0 degree is even more in a way because of how that has not happened. And so, like I said, some people have said that it's never happened. Any astrologer, I think they kind of nailed it down and said that they believe for sure that it was like 4,300 and something BC. But some said 9,000, and some said never, that it's never happened. So, but just that little bit, it's just only because it was yesterday. And so it was very interesting. And there was not a lot of talk about it, which they always talk about stuff like that. Like I always, if there's any little slightest thing, I'll hear about it all over the YouTube and everywhere else. But with this, for some reason, even though it was like probably the most significant event, and they aren't talking about it, which I just thought was very odd, you know.
Yeah, then no, that I don't follow that, but I hear about it every once in a while as far as alignments and all that, and I think it is fascinating. I haven't looked into it a lot, but I'm glad to know someone that does look at that stuff because I don't as much as I probably should. So and yeah, thank you for sharing that because I think you're the co-host here, and I want you to have your own time and your own things that you can bring to this outside of just what we talk about here as well. So whenever you
Well,
have something like that, I already said you're welcome to bring it up on the show.
I appreciate it, because I brought it up to you you just chat like in the DM, just talking with you about it because I thought it was exciting, and I did appreciate when you were like, "No, you should go ahead and bring that up." And I do think it's good that people hear about it, and you know, it's interesting. Now that's all there is really to say about it. Luckily, so, like it doesn't take up a lot of time. So just a little blip of something to think about. But thank you, James, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the show. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, and yeah, so tonight I'll be talking about the house that used to be my grandparents' house, and then my older sister's family's house for a few years after my passed away. I think it was years. So didn't even think to try to talk to my family about when exactly did my grandparents get the house. When exactly did my sister get? I'm terrible at remembering dates and all that, all these things. So, um, but I will make it as detailed as I can here. So, the my this house is where I had a lot of my other um, out of body dream experiences, and it's where I had a few other experiences as well with my cousin, and in one case with several of my cousins, and and I mean, and then after when it became my older sister's family's house, I had a couple of things there, and my older sister had a couple of things. I think, yeah, a couple of things there. So I have a lot to go over here. I think overall, but um, it started when my cousin and I were kids. Uh, we used to go over. Our whole family used to go over to visit my grandparents a lot. Just whenever it was a weekend, there or even weekdays, I guess. And probably the kids we didn't get to as much, but people would just go over there. People from the family would just go over there to visit, and on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever. And then, of course, for any kind of family gatherings or holidays. And but this one weekend, I don't know what day it was or what was going on, but my cousin and I were both there. This was after our first couple of experiences at his house, at my aunt and uncle's, uh, what was their house. And so we had a little bit of experience with these kinds of things. And we happened to be going through this hallway. There was a little hallway that went behind the living room and dining room, uh, and it had the stairway going up to the second floor and the bathroom and a bedroom sort of behind the living room and dining room. But one day we were going past the stairs leading up to the second floor, and those stairs go up, and then there's a landing, and then to the left there's another landing, and then a couple more stairs that go up to get to the second floor. And there's these windows there, uh, in the back of the house. And we went by the stairs, and we stopped because we had seen something, and we went back because we were surprised, and we both saw an older woman in a blue dress with a white apron standing on the landing, but she was see through. We could see the wind through her, and she was. And I got a sense that she was smiling at us, and almost like she knew us, or at least knew one of us. And I'll get to that because there's a chance you might have picked up on who I was uh, in that encounter. Um, but anyway, so we saw her, and but we weren't afraid. It wasn't like the other lady that we saw at his house in his basement. This was not the same. Not the same feeling, not the same person. Uh, and we just thought, well, that's fascinating. That's amazing. And went about our business, um, and we didn't see her anymore that day. But every so often, when we'd go over there and we'd go through that hallway, we'd see her at the top of the stairs. And for years, I didn't say anything about this because uh, I just didn't know what people would think about it. And at some point, years later, once I was an adult, um, I was talking with my grandma, and somehow we got to the subject of just weird things, weird experiences. I don't know now how it started or where it started, because this again was still, even when this happened, when we talked about this, her and I, it was like 20 some years ago now, at least 20 years ago now, I believe. And I told her what I had seen, because she told me about visiting the neighbor's house one day, and to meet the neighbor wife, the husband and wife that lived there. She was talking with the wife, and the wife stepped out of the room for a minute, and my grandma happened to be looking around at everything and some pictures and on a table, and one of the pictures uh, surprised, and it was a woman in a blue dress with a white apron. Turns out my grandma had also seen an apparition of this woman in the kitchen years before my cousin and I ever saw her. And she just happened, grandma stepped away from the stove for a minute and came back, and this woman was standing there looking at the stove, facing the stove. But she appeared solid, but then she just vanished. And turns out this woman was the owner of the house, and she was the mother of the husband, the neighbor husband that was next to my grandparents. And the house was built for her and everything. And I was just fascinated by this, and the way my grandma found neighbor looking at this picture, and so yeah, that's my husband's mom, and so I found that to be really fascinating. And so sometime after that, I told my dad about this because I was just so shocked, and he said that he saw her as well, also on that landing of the stairs. But when he saw her, she was on the landing and she was sweeping, and then she just vanished. And so turns out there's this whole list of little list of sightings. I also saw this woman one night. Uh, when it was my cousin and I were staying overnight there, and my cousin had already fallen asleep, and of course I hadn't because I'm a night owl. And I was laying on the couch, and I saw this blue light come from around from that hallway behind the living room and dining room, and this same woman in that same blue dress, but she came out from that archway that led into the hallway and went around the living room and out into the dining room and stood by the window looking outside. And when she went by me, I could have reached out and put my hand right where she was. Of course, I didn't. But also, when she stood by the window, she was standing, basically occupying the same space as my grandpa's favorite chair, dining room table chair, where he always sat. And I fell asleep just looking at her. And so, yeah, it was really amazing that we had all these sightings. And then years and years later, I told my older sister about this because she's interested in these things too. And she bought the house after my grandma passed away. And her and her husband and their kids stayed there for a few years. And the first night she stayed overnight there, um, the house was being basically the my grandparents' belongings were being moved out as my sister's family was moving in, and there were things in the front porch from my grandparents still. And the first night my older sister stayed overnight there, she just laid a blanket on the living room floor and laid there and to go to sleep. And she woke up because she heard a alarm clock. And set everything up yet, and why would there be an alarm clock set to go off on the porch? And she went out into the porch and found an old alarm clock that used to be my grandma's, and it was going off even though it wasn't plugged in and had no batteries. And it kept on going off for a minute, and then eventually stopped. And then my sister went back to bed. And so she had one of the things long after that. She knew I almost name. I don't really want to say the name just in case. But she knew about the neighbor, the original owner, basically, and she she wanted to see if she could reach out to either the original owner or this woman in the blue dress and white apron, or my grandparents, her grandparents, and using her phone, using a voice recording to get basically what they call an electronic, basically an EVP recording, electronic voice phenomenon. And so she sat on the steps leading up to the second floor and started the recording and asked if my grandparents, our grandparents were there, and then paused, and then eventually asked if the Mrs. So and so, are you here? And eventually she stopped the recording and played it back. And when she asked for the neighbor or for the original owner, she got a woman's voice saying something like, "I'm still here." So that's all the experiences there. All my ex there while I was awake. Um, I'll um, uh, I'll let you get it, Jen, but I just that's I have other ones that I'll talk about after the sort of some kind of a astral travel out of, but looking forward to hearing your thoughts about any of that, Jen, as well.
Okay, I have some thoughts about it, I guess. My dog is barking, I'm sorry. So I was getting onto
That's
him,
okay.
but so it reminds me of, the idea that if this was a house that she tended to for a great deal of her time and spent a lot of energy and time, um, my cat was walking through, and so my dog is barking at my cat. But
Oh,
so it's just really interesting to think about the amount of time that she would have spent. Um, Apparently, it sounds like she cared a great deal about, because at least I wonder this, if she was tending to the home and kind of the one who was sort of, you know, really taking it as a responsibility to make the house feel like a home and doing all kinds of things that would make it comforting to the people who live in it. So I spent her life, or spent a great deal of her time focusing on that, and the energy kind of still resonating with that around the house, or even that the memory in the house from the days and days and days of dedication to the tending of the house, that after the fact that she no longer is in living body occupying the home, but that other people come to live in the home, and she is still kind of tending the space even for the new occupants, but the same way as before, sort of a spirit of the house, still tending to it, even though, you know, and caring for it, for others to be living in it. So, to some degree, I think still keeping the house, still doing the keeping of the house. Is what it sounds like. And then people witnessing that the same way. Not much different from when people who were alive would witness it. It's just sort of a passing subtlety of the tending of the space, a sort of spirit of the house that's tending to keeping it with the same type of care and the energy that would give off people in that space. I think it's very, very special. And still being, I mean, I think too, in some regard, if it was still being, she must have seen it as being necessary, or just the imprint is so strong from when she did that it's still apparent to even those people after, because the ritual for her of doing that was still lingering, even for people who moved in, you know, however many years later, that the imprint is still there from the amount of care that she put into it, or something of that effect, perhaps.
yeah, and I mean, my grandparents
It's
moved there,
kind
I
of what
believe, in the. Sorry, yeah, my grandparents moved in there. I forgot to mention, like in the, I think the '60s, maybe late '60s. So they were there from then until like the 20 teens, 2020, basically. So that's a good long time to be there. And yeah, and so these sightings happened. They weren't constant, but they were just here and there every once in a while. Um, and at first with my cousin and I seeing it, seeing this apparition of her, I wasn't surprised because we had seen stuff at his house. But then finding out that we weren't the only ones to see her, uh, experience learning her, but I'll tell in a minute. But yeah, so it did very much seem like either her or some memory of her was still there, just keeping an eye on things. And I got that feeling as well. When I would, so I forgot to mention this too. When my older sister and her family moved in, there was a time of like a year or so, maybe almost 2 years, where every so often I would go and stay for part of the night while my older sister would go, and she was in a band, uh, a music, and she and her husband would go and she'd be part of that, and they would bring me over there, and I'd stay with the kids who were not little, but just old enough to take care of themselves, but just they wanted to have someone there, an adult there with them, and then they'd come and they'd take me home. And when I'd be there at night, and after the kids had gone upstairs to their rooms to go to bed, I get this feeling of just presences like moving around the house and just watching and keeping an eye on everything and making sure everything was fine. And they never came right toward me, but I just got this feeling of that. Um, and so I had that experience as well. There was one other experience I forgot to mention that I was going to mention what happened exactly. But when my cousin and I were kids, a bunch of us, not just him and I, but some other cousins as well, we decided to go and explore the second floor. There were two rooms up on the second floor, and the family never really, when we had gatherings, no one really stayed up there. Everyone stayed on the ground floor. But this one gathering, we were there, and we decided to go explore the bigger of the two rooms. And we found this desk, and we were looking. Probably shouldn't have been doing it, but the kids, you know. When we were looking through the drawers in this desk, and we found this picture, and there were some people in it. And uh, as we were looking at this picture, there was an older man in the middle of the picture. And as we were looking at this picture, the image of this man, he turned his head, and his eyes were red, and he smiled at us. And we dropped that thing and ran down the stairs and never went exploring up there again like that. And at the time, it was now I didn't to be scared, but it freaked us out because it was a picture. Now, of course, now when I think about it, it probably wasn't the physical atoms of the picture moving. At least I don't think it was. It was some kind of psychic mind interaction, projection, something uh, going on there. And I don't know if it was with an intelligence or just with the energy in the picture, but or around the picture. But it was something like that going on there. And other than that, I have no idea what to think of that. Except now, to me, it's amazing because it looked like something in a static photograph actually moved, which is something you only hear about or see like in movies. But it actually appeared to happen right in front of a bunch of us. So, yeah, that's probably the wildest experience I had there.
That is very interesting. The thing with photographs is so strange because, you know, I think there's something about it. There are some people who believe, you know, that they don't want to be photographed. Everyone knows people like that. They don't want to be photographed. It's very fascinating. And then there are some groups of like certain, well, for example, I'm thinking of the Amish. groups like that. They believe about the photos, the issues of certain religious beliefs. They will not keep photographs on the walls in their house, you know. It's very interesting. But then on the side note, it's also fascinating. When my grandfather passed away, a long time ago now, and I had a picture of him I always kept up on this shelf in particular at my house on top of a wardrobe with some of his things because I was very endeared to him. And it was him in his service uniform when he was young. And when he passed away, it was around the time that he had passed away. The photo, for no reason at all, fell off the wardrobe onto the carpet. But it fell off of the shelf, and I thought it was so strange. And then, you know, his funeral and everything, as it was. But then I began to hear from my aunt, because we, you know, they keep family photos down the hallway, and he had photos all the way down his hallway and things too. And one of the things I kept, one of the mementos I kept, was he kept, you know, this, you know, I guess an album, a photo album, and I kept that for a long time. And then, but anyway, she said that in her house, in the hallway, that some of his photos and things like that, where he was in the photo, would fall off the wall, like as if they were bumped or something. And she'd be walking down the hallway and find one of his photos and pick it up and put it back on the wall. But that it happened a couple of times, not like over and over again, but a couple of times. Almost like a way of like communicating in some way. But there was such a significance about family photos, and my family anyway, growing up, and just at family events and everything. Of course, I suppose that's for everybody, but, you know, there is something very odd about it. But then as far as the red you're describing, maybe you're right. Maybe it wasn't like frightening, but it could have just been, you know, that it presents that way. And people typically think of red as being like this very negative thing. Some people do. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. You know, people who have like a very fiery spirit or a strong energy like that, it could present that very obvious. And I don't know if it has to do with the light spectrums or what, but I don't know. That is really interesting story. Very.
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't remember now, like, 'cause I know that there are certain conditions where when you take pictures, people's eyes can appear to be red, so I'm not sure if they were already red in the picture or not. But either
Yeah,
way,
there's
you
that.
know,
There's that. Yep.
yeah, so I'm not sure what was going on there. I just know that either way, even without the red movement, that was the biggest shock there. But also, I mean, our family, you know, my grandparents were both Catholic, and so red, you know, there's that I think uh, idea that if it's red, if it's glowing, it's got to be, you know, evil or whatever. Um, so it definitely startled us, but and it's weird because it doesn't make sense for it to have been evil because nothing else that happened in that house was evil. So that's why now I don't really think it was meant to be negative in a way. It just, you know, I do think in many cases when things happen, there are unintended consequences. Um, Whenever agencies to show themselves, sometimes the people don't. They think of they get afraid, they get frightened, and as well as maybe it was supposed to go. And so I'm sure that that was probably one of those cases there. But yeah, so it's really it was an amazing one. But um, yeah, I can move on to the dream stuff here in a minute, and then unless you have any more thoughts first. But okay, looking here. So um, anyway, here let me see. I'm looking. Yep. Uh, the um, the other things that happened with me, they were not. Again, I didn't. Eventually, the house was out there physically in years, but I went back there a couple of times, and apparently to visit my grandma when it was after my grandfather had passed. And I think it's because I was wondering about her and was worried about her being there, being there herself, which might have caused me to sort of travel there in my sleep, out of body, astral projecting, that kind of thing. Because I had a couple of experiences like that. One time, I after I went to sleep at night, I kind of woke up, so to speak, and found myself sitting on the floor, even though I couldn't really feel myself, but sitting on the floor in the dining room and looking into the living room. And she was sitting in her chair, her favorite chair, at the coffee table and playing solitaire, and with actual, not computer solitaire, actual cards, physical card solitaire. And I just sat there for a while, and I was excited to see her. And at first, I thought about saying hi or going her, but then I was thinking, what would I look like? What would I sound like? And I didn't want to frighten her. Again, going back to that, what I was just describing there, with other beings, probably not meaning to frighten a bunch of us kids when saw this picture moving. Had the same kind of thing in my mind. I didn't want to frighten my grandma, and so I just stayed in place. And eventually, I got tired, and everything faded to darkness, and I was not there anymore. And eventually, I woke up, and happened a second time where I found myself sitting in the living room at night after I'd gone to sleep here in my apartment, and I knew where I was, and I could hear my grandma just not really snoring, but just breathing in the next room as she was sleeping in her bedroom as she was sleeping. And so those are a couple of times I did that while she was alive. And then after my sister's family moved out of the house, well, first of all, there was one day actually, where I fell asleep middle of the day, and I was in my chair and uh, had a dream. I think it may have been an out of body, but also it wasn't a regular one. It was like almost like it was a partial travel or something. I'm not sure, but I found myself sitting in the living room. This was when my older sister and her family owned the house. Uh, I was sitting in this rocking chair that I knew very well, and I knew where it was at. But everything was, I couldn't open my eyes, so everything was like dark. But I could just barely see uh, where I was at in the living room. And I could feel something uh, sort of gently rubbing against me. And I could tell it was the family dog. And I just knew somehow that it was able to sense me. And it was saying hi. And I just sat there because I was so amazed at this. And then eventually, of course, as it always happens, I got tired and everything faded, and I woke up back here again. And at first, I thought it must have just been a dream, but now I really don't know. I think I may have been traveling that day. But eventually, the family did move. They had to sell the house. And after that happened, this one night, I fell asleep here at home. And I had a dream of being back in that house again. But I noticed that I didn't recognize any of the furniture. And I was moving around. I moved through that little hallway and into the living room because I saw that the bedroom door was closed. And I was somehow able to sense that there was someone or maybe two people in that bedroom. And so I didn't want to go that direction. But I went into the living room and again didn't recognize any of the furniture, and eventually everything faded, and I was back here again. Uh, Trying to think of the next one that I had there. Well, I had another one where I was in that house, and this is the probably possibly the weirdest one, and this ties back to possibly the first sighting I had of the original owner. I had this dream once felt like more than a dream, felt like a paranormal experience, where I had fallen asleep here at home and found myself in that house, but it looked different. And not only that, there was an older couple there in the house, and I didn't recognize them. But the older man, told me that, sorry, but this is our house. You shouldn't be here. And so I left the house and I started heading back home. And I now I think back, I wonder if if the reason I didn't recognize her is that she was younger there. In other words, did I somehow see or go back to the past somehow? And this came from a chat over in the Troubled Minds Discord server. A bunch of us were sitting around talking one night, and kind of started wondering about this. Did I travel back in time somehow as an adult here, years after my grandparents had even passed, and then did again? Was there? Did I meet the original owner of the house in her time? And then when my cousin and I were kids, and we saw her on the landing of the steps, did that feeling of recognition, was that her realizing that she recognized me somehow? A younger version of this random guy that showed up in the house in her time. And I don't know for sure, but again, there was something that seemed like she was familiar and I was familiar. We were familiar to each other somehow. The first time I saw her with my cousin, and so I don't know, but I had a couple other experiences with showing up in the house, and I think there was one other time where I did appear in the past again. There were other people in the house though. It wasn't that older couple, and I just knew I didn't belong there, so I left. I've had other experiences, other weird. They may have been more of my weird alternate reality, parallel universe things, experiences where I found myself in the house and my my grandma and my dad were both there, and it was like we were all living there, or at least they were both living there, which they did for a little while. But he was mostly gone with doing work and everything. But it was like we were stuck in the house for some reason. Like we were supposed to leave, to leave. Time recently, I had this one of these visits or these journeys or whatever, where I was in the house and I was on my way to the through the living room, walking through the living room, and my former stepdad was in the living room, and I could hear my mom moving around in the bedroom. Now they never, my never was in that house. I did. My mom did live there with my dad when I was really little before they divorced for a time, but that was in a memory of my former step. And I remember I was heading toward the bathroom, and I can still see this clearly in my mind. There was a laundry basket by the bathroom doorway, and I went into the bathroom because apparently I had to go to the bathroom, and I was reaching for the switch, and I couldn't find it, but I could feel the wall, like where I was trying to find the switch for the light in the bathroom, and the light was on, so I'm not sure why I was reaching for the switch. The the feeling of the wall, and then it sort of startled me into realizing, wait, what is what is going on here? My former stepdad, he doesn't, he's never. So what was he doing in the house? What was my mom doing there when I was an adult? And I don't know what that was other than possible some kind of really weird, again, alternate parallel universe reality kind of thing. But happy to hear your thoughts on any of that, Jen, as well.
The timeline thing is really, it's super fascinating because, I've had dreams where it's not like a dream. It's same as you're talking about, where it seems like you're actually there. Of seeing, and I wasn't sure, I didn't really put it together, but it was like an apartment. And obviously, sort of time looking, maybe, I'm not even sure what era, but she was, anyway, I think it was my grandmother, younger, in the kitchen, and she was getting everybody kind of ready, the girls ready to get in the car or something. And I remember her talking to me like I was one of her daughters or something. And it was apparent that maybe I was like in the body or something in the dream perspective of one of her daughters, perhaps my mother or one of my aunts. And they all look very similar. We all look very similar. Like all the women in my family have very similar structures in their faces and things like that. And as children. And so I'm not sure if it was my grandmother. It could have been my great grandmother, even, and my great aunts, because I have three of each, did. And so I don't know, but it was as if, she was telling me to put the baby in the car, the youngest child in the car. And I just did it in the dream. But it was so strange because it was as if, I could tell that they all looked familiar. But it was exactly like you're describing, as if there was some kind of time slip or something where you sort of slip into some. I don't know if it's and it doesn't necessarily in your case you're mentioning. There's a possibility that it's not necessarily even to do just with family members, but it seems prominent in that way. I don't see any when you're in a state as far as like in your psyche that it wouldn't pick up a part of some bigger spectrum of events and participate and you be conscious of it somehow. Not necessarily it's a mistake, but that it kind of bleeds through. And you see these events that actually took place. I had another one like that too, as well, with my great uncle, who I love very much, my uncle Arnold, who also fought in the war. He had lost both of his legs. And I had a dream at one point where I saw him up, and there was like a party, and he had his legs. And he was younger, and they were playing music and having cocktails and dancing. I saw that. And I didn't know that it was him. And I thought so. Like he looked familiar, but it looked identical to my Uncle Arnold in my dream, and I knew it was him. But same kind of thing. You could tell that you're in a completely different timescape, and you're seeing a part of their life. And I don't know if it's that they are going to those places after they've passed, and you are also seeing it when you're lined up with it that way, because or not. But it's interesting. There's something about it. Well, obviously, time is just not what we think it is. It's completely made up. I mean, even our
Right.
calendars and all the ways we keep time are just an estimate. It's just a way that we keep, but it's not anything. It's not real at all. But yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, and everyone there, it looks like the Shane in the chat there, Blind Psychonaut was thinking times. Yeah, and I do wonder, when I have those weird alternate parallel universe experiences, it's like I can feel like I'm some I'm connected to some other version of me that's also there and or is supposed to be there, but I'm there instead. So that's the only reason I can think of why, again, my mom and my former stepdad would be living in my grandparents' house. It doesn't make sense otherwise. Like, how does that happen? Um, I just don't know. But yeah, and there's been other times where I've had uh, dreams of out of body experiences of being in that house and feeling like I'm not supposed to be there, and even seeing people outside coming toward the house like they were, I don't know if they were coming home or something or what, but, and like been trying to fall back asleep to get back here because I knew it wasn't my grandparents' house at that point, whether I was here in the current time or not. It wasn't my grandparents or my family coming back to the house. So I wasn't technically supposed to. I wouldn't have really been welcome there, so to speak. So yeah, and I've had that experience several times over the years, where it's like I'm there again, and I'm not supposed to be there. Um, so, and then but I've had other experiences where I've been there with my grandparents, and my favorite one of those. I've told this before, but I like to share it every so often. And we're getting close to an hour mark here anyway. Is that this one time I was listening to the book "Journeys Out of the Body" by Robert Monroe, and I fell asleep in my chair, and I had this dream, but it felt like more than a dream, where I was back in that house, and my grandparents were there, and all their furniture was there, and but there was this voice just talking, and I wasn't listening to what it was saying because I didn't care. I wanted to turn it off so I could talk with my grandparents because I felt like it was their spirits, their souls, their consciousness, whatever you want to call it. It felt like they were actually there, and I wanted to talk with them and see how they were doing. But there was this voice just talking loudly in the house, and I was trying to figure out where it was coming from. And my grandparents were just sitting there watching me wander around the house trying to figure out where this voice was coming from. And what's funny is there was one of my old laptops computers was sitting on the dining room table, and I never even thought to go and look at it, which I think is probably somewhat intentional somehow. I don't know if I could have stopped it even if I had gone to that and tried to open it and manipulate things. But eventually, my grandma just laughed out loud because I kept on asking, "Where is that voice coming from?" And she just laughed out loud and said, "It's coming from you, James." And I just stopped, and then I started laughing, and I woke myself up laughing because she was right. It was the audiobook somehow coming through, and and making it so I couldn't talk to my grandparents, who I could sense were actually there with me in that experience. And I woke up laughing, and it's just it still cracks me up to think about that even to now. But yeah, I think there's something to a lot of I would say almost half of my experiences or more, they seem to take place when I'm sleeping. So, and there'll be a lot more of those as we go forward, especially when it comes to my experiences here in my apartment as well. So and that'll be,
That
of course, for
is
another time.
incredibly
Yeah, go ahead.
awesome. But it's well the bleed through of the sound from your environment where you were, where you're not conscious of the sound of it. You're almost fully engulfed in where you're, you know, cast out to without even, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but it's just really interesting to be finding yourself somewhere where they are. But yes, I've had, well, you know, it's a not an it is an uncommon experience, I think, but in the dream state to be hearing your environment and it's mingling in. But what's really fascinating, I mean, that's uncommon that people remember their dreams whatsoever in any recall. But then that the individuals in your dream, your family members in your dream, your grandparents that you're trying to reach out to, not trying to reach out to, but that you were trying to have a significant experience with them and just see how they were doing, as you said, and then that they recognized that it was coming from your world, from your presence being where they were. Really interesting. Um, but yeah, I've seen that where you're hearing stuff from your environment is playing out. You, for example, are in a dream state and you're having an experience, and then you wake up from it, and say you walk into the living room and realize that your family members are watching, and it sounds you heard and it made sense of why that was in the dream, but it's like you're in between the worlds completely. You're completely in a dream state, but you're also perceiving your natural environment at the same time. It just shows the incredible ability of your inner psyche to handle so much stimuli at once. And then but you can tell where it's focused everywhere and picking up on so much more than you would realize. It's just really incredible. But really enjoyed this show, and I'm so happy to have been here with you, and thank you
Oh
again.
yeah, no problem. Yep. And so before we go here, I'll just list off the locations I still have to talk about. Of course, there's this apartment, my apartment that I'm sitting in right now. There is a training center for sort of independent living skills for people with low vision or no vision that I went to a couple of times over the years. Um, I think those are the two biggest locations. There's a bunch of other little things here and there. I'll probably have like a show at the very end of, I guess you'd call them almost like odds and ends at some point. My apartment may take a couple of shows. But yeah, so this is gonna be a good sized series when it's all going. But I do want to also going back to the whole dream thing and things bleeding through. I have a funny experience, and I don't think it was paranormal at all, but it's just my mind. But it may have been to some degree. Who knows? But I had a friend one evening that was here visiting, and I had fallen asleep early, and he was listening to a video of uh, Bob Saget, of all people, his comedy routine on a computer, on a laptop, and I was having this dream that I was with my friend who was there with me, and we were walking into this. It was a trailer where I used to live um, years and years ago, and all of the furniture from my family was there again, but there was no power. But it was like we were going there because we were going to watch TV and we were going to watch this video. But when we got in there, there was no power, and then we ended up leaving because there was no power. And I woke up because as I was waking up, I was realizing there's no power. So how am I hearing this video, this comedy routine? And I woke up and I realized, oh, that's coming from outside of the dream. But I still don't know why I had to have this dream of going to this place where my family didn't live anymore. I don't even know if the trailer is still physically there or not. I don't even, probably isn't at this point. But yeah, so the human mind, it's in one way. It can be, I think, to know in many cases what's going on, how much paranormal is happening, how much anomalous things are, many anomalous, if I can talk, how much of an experience is anomalous when you're sleeping or dreaming, and how much is it your mind? How much is your mind adding to the experience? And I do think there are both elements to all this. I do think our minds part of the experience, but I also don't think they can that our own minds can are responsible for everything when it comes to all these experiences that I've described tonight or that other people describe, because there's just details and too many experiences where it feels too real, and or there's details that people didn't know about in the waking world and then they find out in the dream. So all this to me is important, and that's why I wanted to go over this again. So, but yeah, we'll continue this next time. And again, special thanks to Jen for joining me for this. And we'll do this again in a couple of weeks as well. And next week will be a topic-based episode. We'll keep alternating these shows here. So let me see. Let me get back to the panel here. That'll be it for this episode. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.